Welcome to the chaos sector. We return to the matrix. Okay, we're just going to have to accept the fact that some out there are just not willing to budge. The chaos didn't investigate the Karen Read case like we did the Kohberger case. This is definitely a fact. And there were definitely elements in that case we overlooked, got wrong. Yeah, it happens. But nobody is perfect. You see, let me explain something. Quote, Read didn't attempt to call O'Keefe at any point upon arriving at the party, unquote. Quote, what are you talking about? Get your facts straight. If you're going to speak on the case, get your facts straight. It's embarrassing. She did try to call him. She tried to call him many times. And Higgins wasn't a partner in crying with Read. He was a part of framing her, unquote. Now, at face value, they would be justified in this scrutiny. But then again, when we break down this very scenario, things do not add up. The gray area we are focusing on is where exactly was Read during the time frame O'Keefe had returned a call to Jennifer. In Higgins' testimony, he stated he'd text O'Keefe and inquired if he was coming to the party. Yet, Read, his romantic interest, he never asked her. Now, the defense is suggesting that Higgins lured O'Keefe to the party to have him set up and beaten. But here's the problem. Where would Read be? Wouldn't Higgins be concerned about Read being a witness? There is a missing piece of, logic that doesn't pan out this way. Apparently, Read hadn't interacted with Higgins prior at the bar and grill. The defense painted a scenario where he was being ignored, may have felt a type of way about it, and this is why he didn't ask Read if she was going to the party. But Read and O'Keefe were together, obviously, so it's not like Higgins had to ask Read as well since they're both together. Subjective. But we see the angle the defense is coming from, yet that angle lacks logic in our view. Higgins, quote, lured O'Keefe to the party and the plan was to beat him up. Perhaps didn't think he would have fallen unconscious, but nevertheless, the plan is the focus here. Higgins would know Read is with him, and if she physically came to the party, it would be stalled. But the motive behind it is still lacking. It is being depicted as Higgins wanted to get O'Keefe out of the picture in this narrative. Okay, it's not impossible, but we have to focus on the physical moment the couple arrived at the party.
Yep, ground zero is the most important element of the case. Sure, Higgins' testimony being grilled by the defense did open things up to justify their claims of a frame job, but there is still the element of Read and Higgins plotting against O'Keefe. Mind you, just because it was depicted as Read ignoring him at the bar and grill prior that night, she was flirting with him in texts displayed in the trial. So it's not like she had no interest in Higgins, and he was just some bitter guy who had a grudge towards O'Keefe to get back at her. Negative. She was flirting with him, and both of them were doing this behind O'Keefe's back. That establishes a potential motive to get him out of the picture. Nevertheless, the couple arrives at the party around 12:15 a.m. Now, there were more text messages and calls prior during this time frame of arriving to the party. Let's review a few of them. As we see here, O'Keefe texts Jennifer at 12:14 a.m. Where to? She responded back at that time and then again at 12:18 a.m. Now, if we spin down to 12:23 a.m., the couple is physically at the residence. This is where we have to figure out if Read intended on attending the party or if she was dropping him off, because there are conflicting accounts of what her intentions were. Take some time to review this information if you want. Now, based on this information, we can't verify if she intended on going to the party. In the scenario where she dropped O'Keefe off due to a stomach issue, this appears to be the case. But in the scenario where she wanted to know if everything was cool, I think she would have waited a bit longer at the home. From 12:23 a.m. to 12:33 a.m., this is 10 minutes of no response from O'Keefe to Read's alleged inquiry about the party. But he was interacting with Jennifer during this time frame. Another thing is, if Read was so intoxicated, then what does that say about O'Keefe? Because she shouldn't have been driving in the snow based on her intoxication level, right? Okay, let's think about it. In the scenario where she wasn't sure about the party, where is this paranoia coming from? There had to be something that made Read feel uncomfortable going to the party, right? Well, that would be Higgins, who had attended the party. Now, why wouldn't Reed inform O'Keefe about it, and they just decide to go home? Again, this is reported as the reason Reed didn't simply get out and go to the party with O'Keefe. She apparently didn't feel comfortable. O'Keefe told her he'd check everything out and let her know. This would have to be due to her secretive relationship with Higgins. But this was not mentioned in the articles that provided her reason for feeling uncomfortable. You see? And that's a possible link to the motive. She didn't feel comfortable because Higgins was there. She didn't attend the party, meaning she dropped O'Keefe off because Higgins was there. That gray area would be an alternative theory. If the defense claims they attacked O'Keefe and tried to frame her for it, well, there had to be a plan. This plan was premeditated according to the defense's angle. Remember, Jackson tried to establish that it was odd that Higgins texted O'Keefe about the party, but didn't text Reed about it. In this narrative, Higgins would have had a plan to get O'Keefe to that party so he could be assaulted, right? This is a plan, a conspiracy. Now, in the defense's claim, they would also plan to frame her for his death, regardless of when, where, and how it happened. Can we all agree with this? I think we can.
Can we suggest that the reason Reed didn't attend the party as she dropped O'Keefe off is because she knew what would happen? And at that point, it's every man and woman for themselves, so the fingers will be pointed at each other to save each other's behinds. As we've pointed out, corruption is only loyal to corruption itself. Reed, in one scenario, dropped O'Keefe off and went home due to a stomach issue. In another scenario, she was uncomfortable and wanted to know if everything was cool. Then she grew impatient and waiting on details about the party and decided to leave. Which scenario are we supposed to believe here? If we go with the claim she dropped him off and stated she watched him go inside the home, then this contradicts Jennifer's claim he never made it to the party. Higgins also stated in his testimony that O'Keefe never made it to the party. In this scenario, both are lying, right? But then you have the other scenarios where Reed was waiting to get verification from O'Keefe that everything was cool. This scenario has Reed intended on attending, not dropping him off. Now, based on the trial, everyone is lying to the chaos, but those lies may be on the end of the cover-up, not the death itself. Jennifer apparently texted O'Keefe while frequently looking out at the road, never mentioned hearing any noises, verbal altercations, nothing. Higgins appeared to be lying as well. Now, this justifies the defense's claim, but here's the problem. It would have definitely helped if Reed testified, and this is why everything gets complicated. With others testifying, in a case where there was a cover-up, it's easy to put pressure on them. But the defendant allowed to sit back and watch when she is the center of the case closes the door. Of course, it's smart to get a lawyer, but in both trials, she declined to testify. This makes it difficult for the prosecution to challenge Reed on her accounts that night, like we've done. Without being questioned, the prosecution can't dissect her accounts, like the defense did with their witnesses. Let's try this one more time.
Hello, Miss Reed. How are you doing so far?
I'm okay. Just trying to get through this.
I understand. As you know, before I continue any further, I have to read you your rights.
I understand.
Good. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to talk to a lawyer for advice before we ask you any questions. You have the right to have a lawyer with you during questioning. If you cannot afford a lawyer, one will be appointed for you before any questioning if you wish. If you decide to answer questions now without a lawyer present, you have the right to stop answering at any time. Do you understand?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I want to ask you about the night of John O'Keefe's death. Was it your intention to attend the party that night?
Yeah, we were going to the party, but I wasn't really sure about it.
When you say you weren't sure about it, can you explain specifically?
Well, I had no real specific reason, just didn't feel comfortable.
Did you let John know this?
Yeah, I told him, and he felt that we should go, so he decided to go check everything out.
Okay, so at this point, I want to address what you told officers about that night. Again, you can stop answering questions at any time. Now, did you tell officers that you dropped John off at the party and that you went home because you had, quote, stomach issues?
Yeah, I think that's what I told them.
Okay, so at some point you had an upset stomach.
Yeah, I wasn't feeling too well.
Is this the reason you felt uncomfortable?
Yeah, I think that was what I told John.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I wasn't feeling well, so I let him know it was uncomfortable.
Got it. Now, in another report, you watched John go inside the home, waited for him to return to let you know about the party. Is this correct?
I mean, I did wait for him to come back out, but, I wasn't feeling well neither, so I just.
So I take it you would have attended the party even though you had an upset stomach.
Yeah, I mean, we drove all the way over there. Might as well go to the party, right?
Sure. It is also reported that you, quote, grew impatient with John because he hadn't returned to notify you about the party. Is this correct?
Yeah, I was waiting for quite some time.
How long did you wait? Give me an approximate time frame.
It was like, I don't know, like 10 to 15 minutes?
So you guys arrived around 12:15ish, correct?
I think so. Around that time.
So around 12:30 a.m., you had gotten a bit impatient waiting for John to return. Is this correct?
Yeah, a little.
You know Miss McCabe, Jennifer McCabe, correct?
Yeah, she's a friend. Well, more of an associate, to be honest.
That's fine. Miss McCabe stated that John never attended the party and she was trying to reach him for quite some time. Are you familiar with these accounts from her?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't know why she would say that. I watched him go inside the home, so, I can't really speak on that.
I take it as you're saying she's lying.
No, like, I don't know, maybe she can't remember.
It's okay. I want to ask you about something else Miss Cade mentioned. She stated that you told her, quote, I hit him, unquote. Did you ever tell her this?
No, I never told her anything like that. Why would I say such a thing?
You never told her, quote, did I hit him, unquote.
Of course not. Why would that even be something I would ask? John went to the party, I decided to go home, and now all of a sudden I'm asking if I hit him? That's ridiculous.
I would agree that it's ridiculous, but in the reports, firefighters stated you told them, quote, I hit him, unquote. Are those firefighters mistaken as well?
I don't know what they're talking about. I never said anything of the sort. We discovered John in the lawn, unconscious. I was shocked at what I saw. I didn't know what the hell was going on or what had happened.
That would be you and Jennifer, correct?
And another associate named Carrie.
I understand. Now the report goes on to say, quote, Miss Reed had said that she asked in a state of panic and shock, quote, did I hit him, unquote. Did you ask this in a state of panic and shock upon discovery?
No. Why would I ask that? Why would I state it? This appears to be some sort of, I don't know, it's suspicious to me.
I agree, it is suspicious. The investigation into Mr. O'Keefe's death reports there is physical evidence of his DNA discovered on your taillight, shards of glass he had discovered on that same taillight, and fragments of the taillight discovered at the crime scene. Are you telling me you never mentioned anything about possibly hitting Mr. O'Keefe to anyone? Because if so, then you would also suggest that what the report claims you stated in response was out of place of panic and shock about possibly hitting O'Keefe. Even this is fabricated, correct?
This is absurd. Whoever is behind this, they're clearly trying to set me up.
You think there's a conspiracy against you?
Sure looks like it.
But in your interview, a part of the documentary, you gave merit to the very allegations against you. But here you're speaking as if it was absurd for you at least ponder if you accidentally hit John that night. Is this a fair point?
No, I wasn't. This was based on what the investigation claimed they discovered. They are the ones that claimed John's DNA was discovered on my taillight.
That's fair. But in that same breath, you created a scenario where you wouldn't know if you had possibly hit him that night. If you wouldn't know, then how can you refute the claims that you asked if you hit him as well?
Huh? I'm confused. That's not what happened.
Let me explain then. In your interview, even based on the alleged evidence, you are questioning if you had possibly hit John that night, which is also what the report claims you pondered prior to the investigation. If you pondered if you hit him prior to the investigation, then this is your recollection of a physical contact the prior night. In other words, in your interview, you would know that you didn't hit John 1,000% because you watched him physically go inside the home. Do you understand now?
I never hit John with my vehicle. That's what the state is claiming.
Again, if you know for sure that you never hit John as you watched him go inside the home, why would you create a scenario of accidentally clipping him, which led to him passing out and perhaps dying outside in the snow that night? This is what you stated, not the state, Miss Reed.
I understand your point, but it was just to explain what could have possibly happened. He was discovered outside the home in the fucking snow, all right? I wasn't sure about That's the problem, Karen. You weren't sure. So you have to accept the reality here that it's possible you did hit John. Now, I'm not accusing you of intentionally hitting him, but based on what we have discussed here today, I think it's fair to conclude that your vehicle had an impact in this case. What? What the hell are you talking about? Are you accusing me of killing my boyfriend? How dare you? Calm down, Karen. Don't tell me to calm down. You're fucking accusing me of killing someone. I don't need this shit.
Wait, Karen, hold on. I'm sorry.
Fuck you.
She really does have anger issues. Might have to factor this into the equation for the upcoming trial.
No, you listen to me. I was arrested for a crime I didn't commit. Went to trial, those bastards couldn't stick anything on me, and the charges were dropped. You understand? I loved John, and for you to sit here and accuse me of murdering the man I loved? How dare you? Piece of shit. You'll be hearing from my attorney, for the record.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry for the misunderstanding. Have a nice day.
Okay, now here's the point. Jennifer clearly knows something, Higgins clearly knows something, and Reed clearly knows something. And they're all liars. The reason we are hardwired on Reed is because of that interview she had. Some suggest, well, she was drunk that night, so of course she would present a possible scenario of her accidentally hitting O'Keefe. That's the problem then, right? Wait, let's make sure everyone understands what is being broken down here. There is a blind spot here. If Reed in that interview presented a scenario where both of them were intoxicated, O'Keefe perhaps tried to get her attention after getting out of the vehicle and then she hit him, then this is Reed acknowledging that she possibly, that's right, possibly hit him. And not only did she present that possibility, she also went on to explain the effects of it, which places O'Keefe outside of the home. And then there's more. She's also justifying the claims from the partygoers that O'Keefe never made it to the party. In this interview of Reed providing this possible scenario, apparently she was so intoxicated she couldn't remember much that night. Now stop right here. If she presented this scenario, then O'Keefe was outside the home and had passed out, right? Well, how can she also state that she watched him go inside the home after dropping him off at the residence? Which one of these scenarios are a fact? The defense's claim of there being a cover-up, yeah, we'll dig into that once we establish this first, because this is the time frame leading up to his death. An investigator starts at this point, and if there's confusion here, then you stay there until it's cleared up. You can't focus on the party because there isn't physical evidence that O'Keefe even attended the party. Reed told officers that she dropped O'Keefe off at the party and went home afterwards because she had stomach issues. Reed dropped O'Keefe off at the party, watched him go inside, waited for him to come back, and let her know if everything was cool. Reed grew impatient after some time while waiting and decided to leave. Where are we to establish the foundation in an investigation if there is conflicting reports of Reed's intentions? Well, the only thing we can confirm is there is suspicion from Reed. Sure, Jennifer could be considered suspicious, Higgins definitely could be suspicious, many who were at the party could also be considered suspicious. But without any proof that O'Keefe was at the party,
we have to focus on Reed and O'Keefe upon arriving at the party. And she literally acknowledges, quote, possibly hitting O'Keefe that night. If this was the only thing you knew about the case as an investigator, she is deemed a suspect. Simple. And here's the thing. Even with developing information that shows that others may have been involved in O'Keefe's death, Reed is still considered the primary suspect in the investigation due to what she stated or admitted to.
Pick your poison here. Either she was so drunk that she wasn't aware in the moment of O'Keefe's whereabouts and accidentally hit him, or she wasn't that drunk and was sober enough to know exactly where he was and hit him. We understand the dynamic of firefighters claiming she told them she hit him. Higgins has connections with the fire department. He slated a component of the cover-up, so of course they will claim she said that. But in that report, it goes on to say that Reed stated, that's right, Reed stated she asked in a state of panic, in shock, quote, did I hit him? Can anyone explain this, though? Because this is her response to that claim by the alleged conspirators. This would be semantics because this is before, I repeat, before the investigation took place. Meaning she doesn't have any investigation that's claiming there's evidence her vehicle came in contact with O'Keefe for her to question herself of, quote, is it possible I hit him last night? Does everyone understand? We've been focusing on this the entire time. This case and the Kohberger case have a lot in common. Both defendants were centered around the element of being framed by law enforcement. On a side note, the judge in Reed's trial was far superior in how she handled her case. She allowed two witnesses to answer, but also allowed them to give context to their answers, and if it was too extensive, she decided to move on. But can anyone explain why Reed, prior to her arrest, prior to any criminal investigation, and the result of it, during the time frame the first responders arrived, can anyone explain why Reed stated in a panic and shock, quote, did I hit him? This is her questioning if she hit O'Keefe upon discovery. This is what keeps her linked to his death, despite McCabe and Higgins squirming around in the courtroom being grilled by Reed's defense team. That's secondary to the chaos, even though we can concede it is extremely important. But it's not as important as the physical setting of Reed, the defendant, acknowledging that she may have come in contact with O'Keefe that night upon discovering his body.
Again, so we're all on the same page. Might not be reading the same paragraphs, but on the same page at least. Reed does not have an alibi. She provided a different account that night opposed to her own defense team. They claim O'Keefe was beaten in the home, while their client questioned did she hit O'Keefe upon discovery, and went on an interview and gave pretty specific details of how he would have ended up deceased, where she discovered him later that morning. This is insane, right? Can you honestly say that she was framed for O'Keefe's death with this analysis? Here's the problem with the defense and their claim. Their stance is that O'Keefe was beaten at the home, attacked by a dog, and then dumped out onto the lawn afterwards. Contemplated on who would be blamed for it, and Reed was the scapegoat. The evidence that was collected, the defense claims the broken taillight pieces were planted at the crime scene after Reed accidentally hit O'Keefe's vehicle the following morning. Now, is this possible? Of course this is possible. But it's also possible that Reed hitting O'Keefe's vehicle, exiting the driveway, assumed to be sober. It's also possible that this driving could have resulted in, quote, clipping O'Keefe the night she was intoxicated. But the key evidence, which is verbal, would be Reed stating that she may have clipped O'Keefe that night and went on to explain how that would have led to his death. That's the problem. And not only that, we have to factor in Reed's claim of asking in a panic and shock, quote, did I hit him? This was before any, quote, crooked criminal investigation took place, where the defense claims evidence was planted. Hopefully, we can call a truce here and present a logical scenario for both sides of the table. This is a photo of Reed's vehicle at the residence. This would be where she was allegedly parked, we assume. Now, we present two different scenarios, and maybe a third, just to expand everyone's perspective of the case. From the defense's stance, Reed dropped off O'Keefe, he heads to the party, and then is beaten, attacked by a dog, and his body is dumped out onto the yard afterwards. In this scenario, Jennifer McCabe and Brian Higgins were either a part of this attack or complicit and helped cover it up. From the prosecution's stance, Reed intentionally hit O'Keefe and then drove off, leaving him in an injured state in which he may have crawled or stumbled onto the yard where he passed out and eventually died. Both are possible. So how does an investigator reach the most logical theory, you ask? Well, to everyone out there, you don't focus entirely on the evidence provided. You have to use your critical thinking skills to generate the most logical outcome. If you go solely on the evidence, you end up just like the judge and jury in the first trial. No conclusive evidence to come to either verdict. We're not the judge and jury. We're investigating the crime from the outside. If we would have investigated this case completely, sure, it would be more accurate analysis based on the information and evidence provided in the case. We only address it in contrast to the Kohberger case with his guilty plea. But even in our brief investigative work in the Reed case, our analysis still was centered around a motive. Here are a few points to ponder. O'Keefe was a police officer, and he was discovered deceased at a party where several colleagues had attended. What motive has been established by the defense? Mind you, for him to be beaten to the degree he was and the dog attack him, this would be an anger towards him that existed prior to that night. But there hasn't been any report of O'Keefe having an argument with any of his colleagues. There hasn't been any reports that he had any connections to any criminal activity that went sour. So the motive for an attack by his colleagues appears unrealistic. Reed, on the other hand, well, there is a motive there, supported with evidence. The incident on their Aruba trip where she shouted curse words at O'Keefe, assuming he was flirting with another woman. The defense even conceded that they had problems in their relationship, tried to generalize it, but the evidence proved their relationship was a bit unstable. It's possible that Reed felt that O'Keefe, taking in his niece and nephew, created a relationship that was pulling him away from her due to his recent obligations. We can understand that. Perhaps didn't want a family setting at that point and led to brewing frustrations and then ultimately arguments. Nevertheless, understanding and compassion supersedes selfishness. Reed accuses O'Keefe of cheating on her, but based on evidence, she is the one who is cheating, or at least flirting with Brian Higgins. Flirting, sending text messages back and forth with Higgins, is considered cheating. The way the "F-you" rolled off Reed's tongue indicated she had an anger issue. And combine that with alcohol, well, what do you think that person's behavior would be? History shows an intoxicated person with a temper is more likely to be violent. In contrast, we think about how both sides dealt with the time frame of not hearing from O'Keefe. Jennifer, who was trying to reach him, sent a text message, quote, "Please answer," and another one, "Please answer so we know you're okay," unquote. This is someone who is showing concern for a friend. I know many would question the sincerity of it, but at face value, that's what it's showing. Reed, on the other hand, throughout all of the unanswered calls that night, she never once thought that it was possible something happened to him. It was straight to pessimism rather than optimism. And to tell him that she would leave his niece and nephew alone seemed more like a threat rather than a concern. Again, the F word was used often in those voicemails, which indicated an anger. Mind you, one of the voicemails has Reed claiming that O'Keefe left her, quote, stuck babysitting while he was out partying and drinking. To all the women out there, if you couldn't get in touch with your boyfriend at a party, sure, there may be a moment of questioning if he's cheating, but then you may think, hey, he may have passed out. Then perhaps another thought creeps in that maybe he's in trouble. Something may have happened to him. Okay, let me call an associate, a mutual friend we both share. Jennifer. Hey, Jennifer, is John still at the party? You see, her actions indicated she had a resentment towards O'Keefe. She clearly had emotional and psychological issues. And combine that with infidelity, you end up with a relationship that's bound to end bad. There wasn't any evidence of O'Keefe snooping. There was evidence of Reed doing this to him. And that's why she stays right in that primary suspect position, despite her innocent verdict and what the defense claimed happened. She declined to testify in both trials, making it difficult for the prosecution to ask her the important questions about the relationship, the evidence of her cheating on O'Keefe, the evidence that she was a bit unhinged in the relationship, her voicemails, and heck, even playing the interview after her first trial back to her in the second trial, using her own words against her.
Also, the incident prior where O'Keefe asked her to leave the home and she wouldn't leave.
We assume this was due to an argument, and we also have to assume O'Keefe didn't want this to continue in the home with his niece and nephew. Reed appearing to be emotionally unstable may have brought hostility into that home over time. Again, she may have not wanted to be considered a, quote, stepmother in the relationship. But you can't take your anger out on O'Keefe for caring for his relatives. He took on that responsibility and you have to accept it, or end the relationship due to your preference. But the problem with Reed is she didn't appear faithful anyway, yet wanted to string O'Keefe along in a relationship she wasn't being faithful in. Perhaps he suspected something, maybe he found something out. Mind you, there is evidence that Reed was flirting with Higgins via text messages. There wasn't any proof that O'Keefe was cheating on Reed, but she constantly accused him of doing so. Listen, we all know how that goes. The cheater tries to project their behavior onto their spouse, and in their delusion, try to convince themselves they're not doing anything wrong.
Yeah, typical. And for her to project that onto a man who has a lot on his plate, being a police officer and adopting his niece and nephew, that's a very nasty type of person. And Higgins is also a nasty type of person, because he was considered a friend of O'Keefe, and yet he was flirting with his girlfriend? A bunch of mess, and it's sad that O'Keefe was the one who ended up dying. Reed was emotionally and psychologically unstable. We all seen the reports. We even heard the voicemails. And we even saw her facial expressions in the courtroom. It revealed someone who has problems. That woman is not clicking on all cylinders. That's just the facts. She didn't have an alibi because it was never confirmed if she intended on going to the party or not. Many overlooked this, but we focused on it. Just like Dylan in the Kohberger case, where she was, quote, out on the town with no verified location. This proves law enforcement didn't want to provide details about her whereabouts because it was linked to suspects. Reed is dropping O'Keefe off in one scenario and going home due to stomach issues, which sounds odd. Then in another scenario, she was intending on going to the party, waiting to see if everything was cool, which there was no explanation to why she felt uncomfortable, by the way. And you see, this would have been a question the prosecution would ask her if she testified. Why were you uncomfortable that night? Didn't you know some of the individuals? Weren't you familiar with the Albert family? Is it because you knew ATF agent Brian Higgins would be there? Did you have a stomach issue? Or was it because you were uncomfortable about the party? Which one was it? You said you watched John go inside the home. Well, did you ever think to go knock on the door and ask where O'Keefe was when he didn't return? You were intending on going to the party in this scenario, right? So when you called him and he didn't answer, why didn't you go knock on the door? Or why didn't you call Jennifer and ask her where John was? Let me guess, you grew impatient and just drove off, without inquiring about where John was inside the party? Well, I could see this happening if you were angry with John, where you just drove off without checking on him, just like you didn't check on him after hitting him with your vehicle. Objection, Your Honor. Yep, this is how Reed would have been grilled on the stand by the prosecution, just like Jennifer and Brian were grilled by the defense. Oh, she had no problem parading around, soaking up the spotlight in front of all those cameras, smiling and joking around, but didn't want the spotlight in trial testifying on the stand? That was your moment to tell the world your truth, but she ran away from that spotlight because it would reveal the truth. And that's why it's suspicious, because the defense knew she would be asked these questions, which would justify their claim she hit O'Keefe and drove off. Now does everyone see why we came to our conclusion?
So we conclude that Reed was not innocent, and the jury is out on whether the, quote, clipping was an accident or intentional. The prosecution would have been able to establish this even more by Reed's testimony. Then we have a third scenario, where Reed and Higgins had conspired together and things didn't go as planned. Mind you, the defense grilled Higgins about an unidentified male that was at the party. This person was alluded to being the, quote, hitman there to take O'Keefe out. Well, who hired him? How would that have come about? Do you think Reed, in her own suspicions and relationship with Higgins, wasn't involved? Look at the overall setting. Reed doesn't attend a party where her boyfriend was discovered deceased at. Think about it. And what was her reason for not attending? Who the hell knows? There's no concrete reason to why. Well, it appears Reed just gluffed her boyfriend off at a party where she knew he would perish. That's the third option to ponder. This is the chaos sector.
You said you loved John. Well, it seems Brian was confused about that, now wasn't he?
What? Excuse me?
Brian Higgins, an individual you seemed quite fond of. So fond that you exchanged text messages that I think the man you loved wouldn't approve of.
You piece of shit. Just wait till my attorney hears about this.
Oh, that's quite all right. But you were creeping behind John's back. Perhaps, maybe, you would even go as far as to, I don't know, try to get him out of the picture. You never intended on settling down with John and have a nice family. No, you just wanted to string him along. It's sad, because John did love you, though.
John wasn't perfect. He flirted with women as well. Don't lecture me on being faithful. You have no idea what I've been through. Fuck off.
Oh, it was so difficult to be with a man who adopted relatives, helping raise them. Yeah, we know your problem. A woman who's so focused on the optics of a relationship, but not the commitment to it. And that's why it was so easy for you to sneak out the back door and mess around with Higgins. Pathetic.
I said fuck off. You don't know anything.
Very spicy, aren't we? That temper of yours, I bet you used to belittle John all the time just because you didn't get your way, now didn't you? Ah, yes.
Fuck you, man.
Yep. Sending text messages and voicemails filled with expletives. You're spoiled. Perhaps you were the only child. Never had siblings to teach you about life, teach you about family compassion, teach you how to love, despite hating each other's guts. You were jealous of John's niece and nephew because you felt they got more attention than you. In turn, this caused you to resent John, a growing hatred for him, while simultaneously being in a relationship with him. A woman scorned knows no bounds.
Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up right now.
Yep. I could imagine you driving on the road. Someone jumps in front of you and you literally lose your mind. Perhaps even attempting to run them over. Oh, and don't let it be anxiety about your boyfriend cheating on you. Oh, that's a recipe for disaster. Slash his tires. Disrespect his niece and nephew. Call them misfits and orphans. Yeah, you got a real sharp tongue, I bet.
Mark my words, I will sue each and every one of you. You hear me? Fucking assholes.
What about that TMZ photo after your first trial? Cuddled up with your attorney. Seemed quite happy if you ask me. Would have never known you had just lost the love of your life so tragically. Even discovering his body, it must have crushed you. Seemed to get over it quite well with your little fancy dinner. Have a question. Were you more happy your charges were dropped or that John was out of the picture?
I'm gonna sue the fucking daylights out of you.
I think you were more happy John was out of the picture. Here's a question. Will you be taking care of his niece and nephew now? Being a pillar of strength for them? Now that they have no one. Help them heal? Oh, let me guess, you didn't like them anyway. Let them find their own way, right?
Fuck you.